Hello everyone, Ailuromage, the Magic History Cat here. For this video, I want to talk about the Nicene Creed. So I will be focusing on what it is, what it says, and why it is so significant. The Nicene Creed is probably one of the most important written documents in the history of Christianity. So what is a Nicene and a creed exactly? Well, the word Nicene comes from the fact that it was written in the city of Nicaea, or Nicaea, which was located in what is now the country of Turkey today. And a creed is a system of beliefs or guiding principles. But before we can really dig into the content of the Nicene Creed, we first need to discuss its origins and a bit of context surrounding it. Before the first version of the Nicene Creed was written, there was a considerable amount of debate that surrounded the truth of understanding God and what it meant to be a Christian. People discussed this constantly. So back then, before phones and Twitter, people held lengthy in-person conversations in meetings and wrote long explanations on the subject matter, and it was very difficult for everyone to agree or find a common ground. So I guess nothing has really changed at all, to be honest. Anyway, among all of this arguing was something called the Arian controversy, which really began to reach a boiling point of contention in the early 4th century. Now, before we go any further, Arianism with an I has nothing to do with Arianism with a Y, so please don't mix them up. Because this video is about the Nicene Creed, I'm not going to linger on Arianism for too long. The important takeaway here is that Arianism was among the first belief systems that challenged the ideals and understanding of Christianity held by other prominent priests and bishops at the time. The name is derived from a presbyter and priest named Arius, though there is debate among historians over the extent of his personal influence over the spread of Arian ideas. In any case, the Arian belief that was so controversial stated that Jesus, who is God the Son, at one point was made, and was not always was, like the Father. This conflicts with the idea that the entire Trinity is eternal, by describing the Son as something newly made. This would make the Son not equal to the Father. If the Son is not equal, then the Son must be beneath the Father. But in Trinitarian belief, this is heresy because nothing in the Trinity is beneath or lesser than anything else. So with Emperor Constantine in power over Rome at the time, a new invigorating surge of Christianity swept across the empire after his Edict of Milan in 313, and this officially legalized Christianity in Rome. Constantine wanted to permanently end this debate. He initiated the First Ecumenical Council, which was to be held in the city of Nicaea in 325 AD. Now, an ecumenical council was a large meeting for bishops, priests, and all manner of religious leaders to discuss and debate Christianity. Ecumenical means the embodiment of the whole church, meant to be a worldwide inclusion of every church head. Now, much happened at this council and each following council, but the takeaway here is that this is where the very first Nicene Creed was born. Its purpose was to create a single unifying idea for all religious leaders across the empire to adopt and discuss, and also to refute Arianism at the same time. So the first Nicene Creed of 325 AD was originally written in Greek. Let's look at this English translation. There are two key parts of the creed in relation to Arianism. This section confirms Jesus, God the Son, as being God. The Son is begotten of the Father, and because God is God the Father and God the Son, then God is begotten of God, meaning that nothing was newly created when Jesus was born, and Jesus, God the Son, always was of the same being as God the Father. The last section gives a clear and direct statement against those that oppose the idea that Jesus is God and is divine, with no wiggle room allowed. With this creed being created and it being accepted by Emperor Constantine and codified, this is what was now accepted as truth for Christianity moving forward, and any opposition would be condemned. Arius and two other priests, Theonas and Secundus, were exiled for refusing to accept the creed. This was a major moment for Christianity, as there was now a powerful creed backed by the Emperor of Rome himself, considered as truth, containing beliefs that are still held today in Christianity over 1500 years later. Among these truths include the sacrifice of Jesus and his resurrection, the confirmation of heaven, Judgment Day, and the existence of the Holy Spirit. The Nicene Creed would continue to be a document at the center of plenty of debate and discussion. There are endless things to talk about, but let's keep the focus on the creed itself for this video. The Nicene Creed would eventually be amended in 381 AD, when Emperor Theodosius convoked the Second Ecumenical Council, which was held in Constantinople. Constantine was already dead by this time. However, this is the document that really became known as the Nicene Creed, and is also referred to as the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. Once again, let's look at an English translation, as this was also originally written in Greek. The amendments expanded upon some of the things originally stated in the 325 document, and also added additional passages. Mary is added by name to the creed to clarify her role and the Holy Spirit's role in how Jesus came to earth. It also mentions Pontius Pilate, or Pontius Pilatus, or Pontius Pilatos by name as the one responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus. It expands upon Christ's resurrection and return. And a very noticeable change are the additional passages explaining the nature of the Holy Spirit. If you saw my last video on an intro to Christianity, you'll recognize here how it says that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. This is before the Filioque. Further down, it also acknowledges baptism, and it did away with some passages at the end. This was now the official Nicene Creed of 381 AD. This particular creed is the one most widely adopted by every major branch of Christianity today, though not without controversy. So moving forward, even with this creed being written, in 5th century, Latin leaders began preaching the idea of the Filioque. The Filioque is a Latin term that means and from the Son. This is referring to the passage added to the Nicene Creed when speaking about the nature of the Holy Spirit. So where the Nicene Creed states that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, the addition of the Filioque states that the Holy Spirit proceeds from both the Father and the Son. Now, though this was already being taught by Latin religious leaders at the time, it wouldn't really become prominently known until the Second Council of Toledo in 447 AD, which was called by Pope Leo I. Now, this was not an ecumenical council. It was a smaller council attended by Latin leaders, and it was here that the Latin Council officially added the Filioque. A lot of this has to do with resistance to persisting Arian ideas. Keep in mind, we're about 120 years after the First Council of Nicaea, so Arian ideas were never actually destroyed. This phrase may seem small, but this is very significant to Christianity to make such an addition. This is because the relationship of the Trinity is different in both the presence and the absence of the Filioque. Each part of the Trinity has a specific role, and by introducing or removing aspects or power to and from members of the Trinity, you alter these roles and how they all relate to each other. I will talk about the Trinity another time in much more depth, but for now, moving forward, this addition is essentially attributed as the early steps that would lead to the Great Schism in 1054 AD, the schism that split the church in half, separating what we now know as Catholicism and Orthodoxy today. It was extraordinarily controversial, and it still is. So then, about 140 years later, in 589 AD, the Third Council of Toledo would be held, called by Recared I, and it would be here that the Filioque would really concrete itself among Latin churches in Western Europe, as it now became codified into Western Christianity. So that is the basic rundown of the Nicene Creed, what it is, what it talks about, and why it's important. It began in 325 AD at the First Ecumenical Council in Nicaea. discussing the main foundational pillars of Christian belief and refuted Arian ideas. It was then codified by Emperor Constantine. In 381 AD, the Second Ecumenical Council was held in Constantinople, where it was amended, had some additional clarity introduced to its contents, and added a few more aspects to the foundations of Christianity, and it was this particular document that became the most adopted and most known. In 447 AD, Latin leaders at the Second Council of Toledo add the Filioque, which would become codified in 589 AD, heavily contributing to the Great Schism of 1054. The Nicene Creed is part of Catholicism and Orthodoxy today and is recited during Mass and Divine Liturgy respectively, with, of course, the exception of the Filioque, which is not included in Orthodox churches. I want to thank you very much for watching, and I hope I was able to provide some interesting information for you. Not sure what I will tackle next, but I will see you in the next video. Thank you, and remember to pet a cat today.